2 minutes into my routine patrol, radar lit up like a Christmas tree. 6 bogeys coming in fast from the east. My heart dropped. Command had briefed us about potential hostiles in the area, but not this many. Not today. I checked my fuel levels, weapons systems, and emergency protocols. Everything was green. But I was alone up here. My wingman had turned back due to engine trouble 20 minutes earlier. The nearest support was at least 15 minutes out. This wasn't part of the plan. I took a deep breath, tightened my grip on the controls, and prepared to engage. Wildcat 3-7, confirming multiple bandits approaching Sector 4. Request immediate backup. Static was my only answer. Something was jamming our comms. The sun was setting behind me, giving me a slight visibility advantage. They hadn't spotted me yet. At least that's what I hoped. I dropped to a lower altitude, using the terrain to mask my approach. Years of training kicked in automatically. Captain Miller's words echoed in my head. Use every advantage, no matter how small. I'd seen pilots panic in situations like this, make desperate moves that only made things worse. Not today. Not me. I needed to think clearly, act decisively. These weren't just any aircraft either. My systems identified them as advanced fighter jets with superior firepower and maneuverability. The kind we'd been warned about, but never actually encountered. Until now, my pulse quickened, but my mind remained focused. This was what all those sleepless nights and grueling simulations had prepared me for. I quickly analyzed the terrain below, a mountainous region with deep valleys and sharp ridges, perfect for hit-and-run tactics. If I could lure them into the valleys, the numerical advantage would mean less. I could pick them off one by one, using the mountains to break their formation and disrupt their coordination. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was something. The alternative was certain defeat. I checked my weapons one more time. 2 air-to-air missiles, 1 targeting pod, slightly damaged from earlier turbulence, and enough cannon rounds for about 30 seconds of sustained fire. Not ideal for taking on 6 enemy fighters, but I've worked with less. Much less. Back in Operation Easter Shield, we'd faced worse odds, and somehow made it back home. My hands were steady now, almost unnaturally calm. The fear was still there, buried deep down where it couldn't affect my performance. Time seemed to slow as I watched their formation tighten. They were getting ready to hunt. What they didn't know was that I was already hunting them. I banked hard right, using a large cloud formation as cover while I positioned myself for the first strike. The element of surprise might give me a chance to even the odds before the real dogfight began. My breathing slowed, my focus narrowed. Everything outside the cockpit ceased to exist. My family waiting at home, the political tensions that had started this conflict, even my own mortality. There was only the mission now, and I had no intention of failing. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of what would become the most harrowing 20 minutes of my entire career. The first missile alert came without warning. My cockpit filled with the urgent blaring of the warning system. I yanked the stick hard left, diving into the clouds while deploying countermeasures. The missile shot past, close enough that I could feel its heat signature on my sensors. That was too damn close. I muttered, sweat already soaking through my flight suit. They'd spotted me sooner than expected. No more time for planning. This was happening now. I pulled out of the dive, gaining altitude rapidly while scanning for targets. There, 2 fighters breaking off from the main group, heading straight for me. I locked onto the lead aircraft and fired my first missile, not waiting to confirm the hit before changing direction again. The explosion lit up the darkening sky as the missile found its mark. 1 down, 5 to go. But my small victory was short-lived. The second fighter was already on my tail, firing bursts from its cannon that streaked past my cockpit. I rolled right, then left, then right again, try to shake him. The G-forces crushed me into my seat, my vision narrowing as blood rushed from my head. Not today, I growled through clenched teeth, pulling even harder on the controls. My aircraft protested, metal groaning under the strain, but held together. Years of pushing these birds to their limits had taught me exactly how far I could go. The enemy pilot was good, very good, but predictable. When he followed me into a tight loop, I cut power suddenly, dropping behind him in a maneuver they never taught us at the academy. One burst from my cannon was all it took. 2 down. But something strange was happening with the remaining fighters. Instead of pressing the attack as expected, they were forming a bizarre pattern I'd never seen before. For aircraft in a diamond formation, maintaining precise distances from each other. My tactical display showed unusual energy readings coming from them, power levels that didn't match any known weapon system. "What the hell are you guys up to?" I whispered, circling cautiously at a distance. That's when I felt it, a subtle vibration through my aircraft, followed by warning lights across my instrument panel. Systems were failing one by one. First communications, then targeting, then navigation. This wasn't battle damage. This was something else entirely. Something I'd never been trained for. Something that shouldn't have been possible. My aircraft was being taken over remotely. The stick moved under my hands, the throttle adjusting itself, as if controlled by a ghost. I fought against it, using brute force to override the manual controls, but it was like wrestling with an invisible enemy. I'd heard rumors about new electronic warfare capabilities, but nothing like this. "Mayday, mayday." Aircraft compromised, systems under external control. I shouted into my dead radio, knowing no one could hear me. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just a routine border skirmish. This was a test of new technology, and I was the unwitting guinea pig. I had seconds to make a decision that could change everything. If they capture my aircraft intact, our entire defense network could be compromised. If I ejected, I'd be at their mercy in hostile territory. And if I stayed and fought, well, no one had ever trained for this scenario. I reached for the emergency override panel, hidden beneath a locked compartment near my left knee. What I was about to attempt had never been done in combat before. My fingers flew across the emergency panel, inputting a sequence I'd been sworn never to use except in the most extreme circumstances. It was a last resort protocol developed by our cyber warfare division, untested in actual combat. "Sierra, Echo, Foxtrot, 418 Delta," I muttered, punching in the final digit with a trembling finger. For 3 terrifying seconds, nothing happened. Then every light in my cockpit went dark. Complete system shutdown, the digital equivalent of a defibrillator shock. I was now flying a 15-ton paperweight with no electronics whatsoever. The enemy's remote hijacking couldn't control what wasn't powered. I'd have exactly 45 seconds before emergency power would attempt to restore critical systems, hopefully without the vulnerability they'd exploited. Wind screamed past my canopy as I began losing altitude, the aircraft sluggish and unresponsive without its fly-by-wire assistance. Pure mechanical control was something pilots and modern fighters rarely experienced. It was like suddenly being asked to ride a wild horse after years of driving cars. Every muscle strained as I fought to keep the wings level using nothing but manual trim and physical strength. The enemy formation seemed confused by my radical maneuver, breaking apart as they tried to figure out what I was doing. Good. Confusion breeds hesitation, and hesitation gives opportunity. I counted down the seconds in my head while watching the altimeter's needle fall. 30 seconds. 20. 10. The mountains were coming up fast. Too fast. Had I miscalculated? Was this how it would end? The familiar hum of systems rebooting was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. Displays flickered back to life one by one, but in a stripped-down, safe mode that bypassed the compromised systems. I immediately pulled back on the stick, engines roaring as I narrowly avoided becoming a permanent feature of the mountainside. My radio crackled with static, then a voice cut through, not my command, but the enemy. "American pilot, surrender your aircraft. We can retake control at any time. Land at the coordinates we're transmitting." They were bluffing. I could tell from the uncertainty in the voice. My reboot had closed their back door, at least temporarily. Instead of responding, I banked hard toward the nearest enemy fighter, firing my remaining missile without radar lock, pure visual targeting. The missile missed, but it wasn't meant to hit. It was meant to scatter them, to show them I wasn't surrendering. And it worked. Their formation broke apart as they took evasive action. That's when I noticed something odd about the lead aircraft. It was different from the others, with unusual antenna arrays along its spine. The control ship. Take that out, and their coordinated electronic attack would crumble. I pushed my fighter to maximum speed, ignoring the warning lights and the dangerously high engine temperatures. This wasn't in any manual, wasn't something they taught at flight school. This was pure instinct, the kind of desperate gambit that either makes you a legend or a cautionary tale. The enemy pilot saw me coming, tried to evade, but too late. I was operating on a level beyond training now, beyond thought. Just pure action and reaction. As I closed in on his 6 o'clock position, I remembered something my first instructor had told me. Sometimes, the most unexpected tactic is the one that works. Because no one prepares for crazy. With cannon rounds depleted and no missiles left, I was down to the oldest tactic in aerial warfare, the ramming attack. Not a full collision, which would destroy us both, but a controlled clip of his control surfaces. It was suicidal by any standard measure, something no modern Air Force trained for. The enemy pilot clearly wasn't expecting it either. As I closed the distance between us, I could almost imagine his panicked expression. At the last possible second, I rolled slightly, allowing my wing tip to slice through his horizontal stabilizer. The impact shuddered through my aircraft, alarms blaring as my own wing took damage. But I was still flying. He wasn't. His fighter spun out of control, its sophisticated electronic warfare suite useless without aerodynamic stability. The remaining fighters immediately broke off their attack, racing to form a protective screen around their fallen comrade. I'd guessed right. He wasn't just any pilot. He was valuable, possibly the only one trained to operate their new system. As I watched his parachute deploy, I felt no triumph, just grim satisfaction that I'd survived. My damaged aircraft struggled to maintain altitude, fuel leaking from ruptured lines. I had maybe 10 minutes of flight time left, and I was still deep in hostile territory. The nearest friendly forces were at least 100 miles away, too far for my crippled jet. I'd have to find somewhere to put down, and soon. The irony wasn't lost on me. After preventing my aircraft from being hijacked, I was going to lose it anyway. That's when my radio crackled again, this time with a familiar voice. Wildcat 3-7, this is Raptor Flight. Looks like you could use some company. Somehow, despite the jamming, despite being ahead of schedule, our backup had arrived. 4 friendly fighters appeared on my damaged radar, moving fast from the west. The remaining enemy aircraft, now outnumbered, began to retreat. I laughed, a sound halfway between relief and hysteria. Raptor lead, you have no idea how happy I am to see you guys. As they formed up around me, providing protection for my limping aircraft, the squadron leader responded. We got your emergency beacon. Strongest signal I've ever seen, like it was boosted somehow. I frowned, checking my instrument panel. I hadn't activated my beacon. Something else had. Something in the code I'd entered during the system reboot. Later, during debriefing, I'd learned the truth. That emergency protocol I'd activated wasn't just a system reset. It was a sophisticated counter-cyber weapon, designed to not only block the enemy's intrusion, but to send out a powerful signal that couldn't be jammed. More importantly, it had recorded everything, the exact frequency and method of the hijacking attempt. Intelligence gold. The brass was ecstatic, talking about game-changing intelligence and technological leaps. But all I could think about was those moments when my aircraft had moved against my will like a puppet with cut strings. The terrifying vulnerability of our most advanced machines, and the realization that war was changing, becoming something more insidious, fought in electronic spaces as much as physical ones. The flight back to base was tense, my damaged aircraft barely responding to controls. Twice I nearly lost it, the asymmetric damage making it want to roll constantly to the right. Every minute was a battle of concentration and physical endurance. By the time the runway came into view, my flight suit was soaked with sweat, my arms trembling from the strain of fighting the controls. But something else had changed too. The moment I'd faced those impossible odds, when I'd been forced to rely on nothing but raw piloting skill and instinct, that had awakened something. A deeper understanding of what it means to fly, to fight, to survive. Some pilots go their entire careers without finding that edge, That place where training ends and something more primal takes over. I found mine, and somehow I knew that nothing would ever be quite the same again. The landing was the hardest I'd ever attempted. Asymmetric thrust, damaged control surfaces, and fuel starvation in one engine. When my wheels finally touched down, the entire right side of my aircraft collapsed, sending me skidding across the runway in a shower of sparks. Emergency crews were on me in seconds, foam covering the aircraft as they pulled me from the cockpit. I was alive, but my fighter was a total loss. As medics checked me over, I watched senior officers already swarming around the wreckage, particularly interested in the flight recorder and onboard computers. This wasn't standard procedure. Something big was happening, and I was at the center of it. 3 hours later, still in my flight suit, I sat in a secure briefing room surrounded by faces I'd never seen before. Intelligence officers, technical specialists, even a general I recognized from news broadcasts about cyber warfare. What you encountered today wasn't supposed to exist for another 5 years, the general began, his voice grave. It was a prototype remote override system, designed to take control of enemy aircraft without destroying them. The room fell silent as images appeared on the screen, technical diagrams of the system I'd fought against. Until today, we thought it was theoretical. You've just proven it's operational. I leaned forward, studying the schematics. It was elegant in its simplicity, targeting the automatic flight assistance systems that all modern fighters rely on, using their own programming against them. "How did you know to use protocol, Sierra Echo Foxtrot?" asked a woman in civilian clothes, her eyes sharp and analytical. I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. That protocol wasn't in any official manual. It had been shared with me during a late-night conversation with Dr. Kaminsky, our squadron's technical advisor, who'd always seemed too paranoid about emerging threats. "Just a hunch," I replied, meeting her gaze steadily. She nodded slightly, understanding passing between us. Some knowledge exists in shadows, passed along unofficial channels by those who see threats before they become official. Kaminsky had been right all along. His unofficial briefings to select pilots, conducted against regulations, had just saved an aircraft and pilot, and possibly much more. The debriefing continued for hours, every detail of my encounter analyzed and dissected. What became clear was that my experience would reshape our entire approach to aerial warfare. New training protocols, new countermeasures, new awareness of vulnerabilities we'd never considered before. "The data package your emergency systems sent back is priceless," the technical lead explained, showing me a complex stream of code. "It's given us the key to developing our own defenses." I should have felt proud, should have embraced the hero narrative they were already constructing around the incident. Instead, I felt a deep unease. If this technology existed now, what else was out there? What other ways could our most sophisticated weapons be turned against us? And how had the enemy acquired such advanced capabilities? These weren't rogue operators or minor powers. This was state-level technology, years ahead of what should have been possible. Someone had made a quantum leap, and we'd almost missed it. That night, alone in my quarters, I replayed the encounter in my mind. Not the technical aspects that the intelligence teams were so excited about, but the raw, human experience of it. The moment when I realized my aircraft was no longer mine to control. There's a special kind of violation in that experience, a breaking of the sacred bond between pilot and machine. For centuries, warfare had maintained one constant. A human being made the final decision to engage, to fire, to kill. But that line was blurring now. Today, it was remote hijacking. Tomorrow, fully autonomous combat systems making their own decisions. Where would it end? And what role would human courage, intuition, and moral judgment play in this new landscape? I pulled out the small notebook I've kept since flight school, where I record personal observations and lessons, things too subjective for official reports. "Today, I fought against the future," I wrote, and only survived by reaching into the past. It was true. The mechanical flying skills that had saved me were becoming increasingly rare in an age of computerized assistance. Most pilots my age spent more time managing systems than actually flying in the traditional sense. How many could have handled an aircraft with all electronic systems disabled? How many would have even thought to try? Perhaps our increasing reliance on technology was creating a new kind of vulnerability, not just in our machines, but in ourselves. A dependence that dulled certain essential skills and instincts that had defined aerial combat since its inception. The next morning, breakfast in the officers' mess was a strange experience. Word had spread about my encounter, details growing more exaggerated with each retelling. Pilots from other squadrons stopped by my table, asking questions I couldn't answer due to security classifications. But beneath their curiosity was something else: concern. The unspoken question in everyone's eyes. If this had happened to me, could it happen to them? Could they find themselves suddenly passengers in their own aircraft, watching helplessly as control was seized by unseen enemies? The thought was profoundly disturbing to people who define themselves by their mastery and control of the most advanced flying machines ever built. I understood their fear because I'd lived it and conquered it, but not everyone would have the specific knowledge I'd had or the instincts to use it correctly. 2 days later, I was summoned to Washington for further debriefing. As I boarded the transport plane, my squadron commander handed me a sealed envelope. This came directly from Central Command. He said, his expression unreadable. "Don't open it until you're airborne." Once we were at cruising altitude, I broke the seal and read the single page inside. It was a directive creating a new training program focused specifically on countering electronic hijacking and operating aircraft under compromised conditions. And I was being assigned as its first instructor. The final paragraph stayed with me throughout the flight. What you experienced represents a fundamental shift in the nature of aerial warfare. Your actions have given us a critical window of opportunity to prepare our forces for this new reality. How we use this opportunity will determine the future of air combat for decades to come. As the coastline disappeared behind me, I realized that my encounter hadn't just changed my understanding of modern warfare. It had the potential to change everyone's. The question was whether we could adapt quickly enough to this new threat landscape, where the battle for control happened not just in the skies, but in the invisible realm of electronic signals and code. Are you ready to face the changing landscape of modern aerial combat? The story you've just heard isn't just about one pilot's extraordinary battle against impossible odds. It's a wake-up call about the evolving nature of warfare itself. Technology is transforming the battlefield in ways we never imagined, creating new vulnerabilities even as it provides new capabilities. The line between human and machine decision-making grows thinner every day, raising profound questions about the future of combat. What would you do if faced with a situation where your training provides no answers? How would you react when the technology you trust suddenly becomes your greatest threat? These are questions every military strategist and aviation enthusiast must now consider. The incident described here has forced a complete reassessment of combat pilot training programs worldwide, with new emphasis on manual flying skills and cyber defense awareness. The ability to think beyond conventional tactics might just be what saves lives in the next conflict. The intelligence gathered from this single encounter has proven invaluable, providing insights into capabilities that were previously only theoretical. But more importantly, it reminds us that no matter how advanced our systems become, the human element, courage, adaptability, intuition, remains irreplaceable. In the end, it wasn't sophisticated countermeasures that prevailed, but a pilot's willingness to attempt the unexpected, to reach beyond training and rely on pure instinct when all else failed. If this story has given you a new perspective on modern aerial warfare, don't keep it to yourself. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What aspect of this encounter surprised you most? Do you think we're prepared for this new era of electronic warfare? Your insights matter in this ongoing conversation about the future of combat aviation. Hit that subscribe button and activate notifications to stay updated on more declassified missions and technological revelations that are reshaping military strategy. Because understanding these changes isn't just for military personnel, It's essential knowledge for anyone interested in how technology is transforming our world, one battlefield at a time.